Okay, I think we have a full class here, and it's very nice to see you all here in this first week. And we are very, very pleased to have here Professor Eleonora Sanseverino from the University of Palermo in Italy, who's visiting us this week, and is here to share with you some of the work that she's been doing. In addition to being the professor in the University of Palermo, she's a professor in power systems engineering. She's also expert in climate, energy, and mobility for the Horizon European program. She represents Italy there, and she conducts research on smart grids and power systems operation with major firms like Prysmian and the national transmission system operator Terna. In addition to that, she has some other commitments, I know, even in Sweden, where I come from. So welcome, Professor Sanseverino, and we're looking forward to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Selina. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Cornell. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to give this Ezra seminar on this topic. So, as Selina said, my background is in power systems, but I've always been very curious and attracted towards digital technologies. So this is one work that will show you a little bit of my, my interests. Although, of course, in my career, I've had many different, attractions and also different projects. But main focus, I should say, is like smart grids. You know that smart grids is a term that defines the marriage between ICT and power systems. So whatever is in connection of ICT, information and communication technologies, so this can be telecommunications, protocols, algorithms, and power systems technology. This is smart grids. Today, I will talk to you about a solution, platform, let's say, to integrate different energy management systems, so different devices representing different end users within an energy community. I will give you a definition of what is an energy community, because of course, energy community is a term, is a wording that has a different meaning across the different areas of the world. And then I will describe you our approach, because I will have also outlined what are the challenges. So this is the outline of my presentation. Many points, right? I will try to be very brief in each of the points. This is a very detailed outline. So first of all, aggregation at the edge of the power grid. So we are talking about electrical power systems, okay? And what means the word aggregation? Then I would talk about the energy communities. What does these words mean in the US and in Europe? Because they have the same words, have a different meaning. Then what are the challenges of joint action? So putting together these energy resources that behind have people, right? So what are the challenges of putting together these people acting together? And then I will tell you about the Italian regulatory framework, which is a regulatory framework for energy communities, which has been, one of the first member states that have created some laws that were really, in line with the European definition of energy community. And I will talk you a little bit about this game theoretical inspiration that we have to model energy communities, and the distributed game that we created that integrates the two features of being distributed and secure from the point of view of the information content that is shared, let's say. And then I will talk to you a little bit about what we are doing to implement this thing on edge devices. But these things, this thing is a topic of a PhD student who is implementing these things. So he's studying on this topic, and we have these two branches of the research. One is pointed on software modeling and this thing. The other one is about implementing the algorithms on edge devices and communication among the different edge devices, okay? So why talking about this topic? Why do you think it is important to involve the end users? Because in the end, what is done by the member states in Europe and across different areas of the world is to incentive people that own energy resources, even simply as a load, to put together, to have a coordinated behavior towards the power grid, okay? So why are they incentivized to act together? The point is that you know that power grids are experiencing, at least in Europe, a deep penetration from renewable energy sources. These sources, from the electrical point of view, have a physical behavior and a dynamic behavior which is different from fossil-fueled generation sources. They're different, okay? And they produce weakness in the power grid. What do weakness means? On the one hand, you may experience congestions. You know that the power grid is like a system of pipes, right? So pipes where electricity flows, okay? So you may have an overproduction from renewable energy and a less consumption from end users, because the renewable energy is unpredictable, right? So you may experience congestions. Moreover, you may have problems of regulation, so of quality of this electricity which is distributed. Again, this thing depends on the simultaneity of generation and consumption, okay? So congestion, if you imagine, is again the same problem, but at a larger, maybe in a larger time frame. The more you get to the real time, you still have problems which are a little bit different, okay? So they impact not on the congestion, so on the capacity of the flows, but rather on the quality of the electricity that you distribute, which transform physically into a frequency instability, and sometimes also in a voltage instability, if you speak about reactive power flow, okay? So the problem is, again, trying to make simultaneously generation and consumption. I said already that you have unpredictable generation. So there are no technologies that will help us to make this unpredictability predictable, so to say. We say dispatchable in electrical engineering, because renewable energy will be really massive. And moreover, think about the life cycle cost of the technologies that are needed for regulation. Imagine about lithium batteries, the cost of provision, the raw materials needed. These are all technologies that have to enter in our power system. In addition, wouldn't it be much better, isn't it much better, to involve the end users, right? To try to compensate and to participate into this balancing. But end users also have uncertainty, right? It depends on behavior of people. It depends on how much they adhere to the program, how much they adhere to the energy transition, if they are not very well economically incentivized. And I would say that this is the case. And you also have a problem of cyber threats. Our world is changing. We have, if you think about all the edge devices that we are running, we are so vulnerable. We say in cybersecurity terms that the attack surface is expanding, right? Because you have a number of different devices that you can attack, right? So the surface is expanding. Moreover, for example, a lot of renewable energy systems have not been designed to be cyber secure, for example. So maybe have been thought of and been designed 10 years ago, okay? And they are vulnerable in cybersecurity terms. And this is a very interesting topic to explore. I invite you to read about these cyber attacks to wind farms, for example. It's very, very interesting. Okay, so what is aggregation at the edge of the power grid? I've tried to classify aggregation based on the main goal of the aggregation. So one goal could be collective self-consumption. So what I described before. So what happens when you have a mismatch, okay? So we try to self-consume together, okay, in a given time frame. So you put together all the generators, you put together all the consumers in an area, which in electrical terms means downstream, one device, one electrical machine, which is the transformer, okay? So aggregate all this so that the flow through this transformer is, reduced, limited, okay? These transformers, they connect parts of the power grid that are at the different power level, at different voltage level, okay? Then you have aggregation for ancillary services provision. The difference between these and these is the time scale. Typically, ancillary services are on the real time. So this is like what I said before about frequency regulation. Okay, so you try to have a support to the frequency because, for example, you detach a bunch of loads all together, and you have a support, for example, during under generation, for example. Another aim for which you could have aggregation is what you experience here in the US. Here in the US, you have these local energy markets. You have the possibility to buy electricity from an aggregator who buys, in turn, this electricity on the market, okay? So this is another way to aggregate end users. So you could have these people buying from the same aggregator, for example, who provides electricity, gets electricity from the market. Or you could have a bargain inside the local system. So you could have someone who generates that sells their electricity to consumers. You will have, of course, something going to the grid in this case. So what are energy communities in Europe? What of these three tasks do they follow? I would say the first two. So in Europe, we don't have any regulated form of peer-to-peer market. Okay, we don't have this local energy markets for the time being. We have the aggregation in certain member states, but I mean, these are still, it's not all across Europe. We rather have energy communities definition as collective self-consumption, okay? So they are incentivized to consume the same amount of electricity which is injected in the grid in the same time frame. The time frame can be 15 minutes or 1 hour, okay? And look here, so collective self-consumption, RES-based, renewable energy sources-based, all to pursue a common goal in terms of environmental benefit, social benefit, and economic benefit. So the main goal cannot be getting money, so making money. The energy community can join to, for example, have an impact on the environment or create a social environment of cohesion, or, for example, pay the bills to those members of the energy community who cannot afford the electricity bill, okay? It has to have further goals, okay? But in general, what is incentivized in Europe is the collective self-consumption. So the money are given to the energy community, so an economic incentive is proportional to this amount of energy, which is locally self-consumed. As I said, Italy has been at the forefront of legislation in this respect. you will find in the literature, European literature I should say, about energy communities, two types of energy communities. One is renewable energy communities, the other one is citizens energy communities. Broadly, the difference is that in this case, you have an issue about proximity. So these people who generate and consume have to stay close by. In citizens' energy community, instead, there is a more emphasis on ancillary services provision. If you read it, this long thing, and you look on the internet about the definition, you will see that there is this accent. Okay? But still, you see, to provide environmental, economic, and social benefits to the community. This stays there for both types. Okay? The Italian ones are renewable energy communities, but our legislator said that these communities in the future, in the close future, will be able, aggregated, to provide ancillary services to the grid. So not only get the incentive for self-consumption, but also maybe provide regulation services to the grid. So for example, detach all the loads and you will be paid for that. So things like that, immediately, all together, so that you can provide, for example, a frequency regulation service. And indeed, I reported here all the different, some countries here in Europe that have incentive here. And you can see I put here in bold what is incentivized. You can see this thing of shared energy is recurrent almost in all member states, not really in all, but in most member states. So collective self-consumption is something which is considered, a common goal in energy communities in Europe. What about the US? Before coming here, I looked on the internet what is energy communities in the US. And I found a different thing, actually. It is different. The Inflation Reduction Act from Biden offers tax credits to clean energy projects that are sited within an energy community. And these sites are sites where you have like coal mines or fossil fuels based business that have shut up, but that have heavily polluted the environment. And so the government is supporting citizens who want to implement renewable energy projects in the area. These are called brownfield energy communities. So it is different from what I mentioned before. It doesn't mean that people have to aggregate in any way, right? Because each one is incentivized, as I understood, okay? So it looks to me that it is different. And so here I summarize a little bit. What is more similar to European definition is what you call microgrids, or simply communities. And in this case, if you look at the internet, you will see that you have a number of incentive programs. But these incentives are more for broad projects, for example, of renewable energy installations, or for example, storage systems to support a community, something like that. You have several funding programs. So it is rather a little bit different. And also, one thing I would like to mention about the US is that in 2016, I noticed this project, which is called the Brooklyn Microgrid, that at the time was developing a very advanced framework based on blockchain technology for supporting peer-to-peer trading of electricity between end users. But now I have no more news about that. So maybe because blockchain has not been well regulated in this context for the time being, because blockchain has a lot of issues that must be still solved probably from the regulatory point of view. Okay. What are the challenges of acting together? What are the challenges? We have technical challenges because if we need to act jointly, consumption data of the others, of each person, are sensitive data. Okay, so I cannot share. Because if you look at the profile of measuring system of a house, you can tell when people are in and when people go out. You can tell with some artificial intelligence tools, you can tell, for example, a lot of things of personal life of people, what kind of appliances they use, what is their, their economic income. so this is very private data. Platforms that maybe manage a joint action can be sometimes too costly compared to incentives. So this is a problem if you're using a platform. It is not currently possible to switch from one mode of operation to the other. So I cannot shift from, if in the future we will have all possibilities, both to be incentivized for collective self-consumption or to provide ancillary services to the grid, or I want to do peer-to-peer trading. Currently, we don't have a technical framework, but also, I should say, a regulatory framework that gives the freedom to end users to shift from one program to the other. But then we have social, economical challenges, which are even maybe more challenging, more strong. Especially, I should say, in Italy, where you have a very much individualistic view on life. And the southern you go in Italy, I'm from Sicily. Sicily is the very, very south. Is the triangular island that you have below the boot. So people don't trust each other, okay? And energy communities in Italy is a legal entity, okay? So you need to enter an association with other people you don't know, and people don't do, okay? In the north of Italy, where there is more cultural tradition to act together, energy communities are flourishing. This is very interesting to see, because there is a difference, okay? So there is a problem, and also there is a problem of modeling the interaction, so the strategies that each person is going to implement for their own, for example, appliances at home to adhere to the self-consumption program, okay? And also, are we sure they will not cheat? If they're not monitored, so if their consumption is not monitored, if their adherence to the program is not monitored by anyone because sensitive data is there, are we sure they're not going to cheat? And then they get the benefit, which is given to the representative of the community for all. And maybe he then picks this money and shares it to everybody, okay? But maybe some people has turned the washing machine at 1 o'clock, and the other one has put the washing machine at 8 as usual. He didn't care, right? So let's look at the Italian case study to have some, some reference point. So this is what I call shared energy. The green line is the generated energy. It takes into account the presence of a store of wind, so you have peaks also during nights. And this yellow line is about the consumption. The blue bars is the shared energy, what we call. So these people acting together are incentivized based on a quantity which is proportional to these blue bars in Italy, okay? And, okay, of course, this yellow line here, which is the consumption, depends on how people behave with their appliances, if they turn them on, off, what time, etc., right? What is the shared energy? I already said that proximity is not only a matter of geography, but it must be expressed in electrical terms. In Italy, we can form an energy community if we are all below the same HV-MV substation. Looking at the rated power of HV-MV substation, I would say these are 1,000 families. So it's like a city district, okay? We thought about using game theory or game theoretic approaches to model the energy communities because we thought that game theory was born to model strategic interactions. So strategies of people that in the end get a payoff, but whose payoff not only depend on their own strategy, but also on other people's strategy. And if you think of the energy community as a set of people that are interacting and that are putting a strategy on their appliances for the whole day, let's say, this is a strategic interaction, right? Because at the end of the day, each person will get a reward that depends on what other people have done, right? Okay? In the literature, game theory, I've read a lot of papers about game theory for energy communities and self-consumption, and you will find mostly the definition of what is fair rewarding, so Shapley value, if you go there, you will look at all these things, and then the modeling of the energy community. Is it a cooperative game? Is it a non-cooperative game? Is it a public goods game? What kind of game is it? What kind of model should we use? Now I will give you a broad definition of cooperative game and non-cooperative game, and I will just give you again the definition of Italian energy communities, and you will tell me which definition you consider to be more feasible, okay? So, energy communities aim at collective self-consumption, and when I talk of cooperative games, I have exchange of information, transparency, I make agreements, and I fulfill them because there is transparency, right? So everyone can see what the others are doing, right? We have a common strategy, and we aim at a maximum overall benefit, okay? So the output of this thing, of the game, is the optimal coalition structure and the strategy and payoff for each member. But the payoff depends on what the others are doing, and the strategy is decided overall. So there can be a coordinator, some optimization model here that optimizes the behavior of all of them. And this information is shared to all, okay? So you put the washing machine here, you put your EV at this time, and so on, okay? What is a non-cooperative game? A non-cooperative game is a game in which each one is doing his own business, okay? They may not be shared information. So I'm planning to do my best individual strategy, and I'm aiming at the maximum benefit through overall benefit. Not only overall benefit, but I will have also other things to look at. The output is my individual strategy and my payoff. Energy communities in Italy are designed like this. You are a group of people, okay? You aggregate into a legal entity. You consume electricity or you produce electricity. You join together in a legal entity. You don't know anything about the others. There is a representative of the energy community which interacts with the entity that delivers the incentive at the end of the year, okay? So, what do you think? Do you think, and this incentive typically is divided by N, and members reward divided by N, okay? What do you think of the two models that better fits the Italian situation, where no one knows about the others? You can guess what the photovoltaic is doing. So maybe you can guess if you want to adhere, if you are committed to the community, then maybe you will put your washing machine at 1. But if you don't care, you will get anyway your benefit, your economic revenue, right? No one will look at you, right? So which model do you think is more feasible? What is your opinion?
Non-cooperative game.
A non-cooperative game. But in the literature, if you look, there are a lot of papers about cooperative games for energy communities, because probably they imagine that the people that stay in the community want to share their data, okay? What I thought is that actually this is like one of those games that is called public goods games. And they're very interesting because in these games, there is the possibility to free ride on others because you really are motivated to free ride. Probably the incentive is low. Probably you are rich and the incentive is low for you. So there's no reason for which you have to take part, right? Okay. So I was very excited in reading all these public goods games. Theory is very interesting, really, and also understandable, I should say. And so I tried to think about how to model this thing. And I ended up with this kind of model. So we have the pool, which is this power grid, where you put the energy sharing. So the blue thing here in the graph, right? Then you're incentivized, multiplying the shared energy by a K, and then this thing is divided in parts for all the agents that are participating in the energy community. Of course, there are a lot of problems because it is difficult to monetize your participation, right? It is difficult to translate into money, right? Your maybe discomfort in participating or the aging of the battery. And also there are other issues about choosing if you want a coordinator or not. You want a central entity that does something, because in non-cooperative games, there are some approaches that are distributed in which you have a coordinator that gives you some proxy, some information of what the others are doing. Okay, so there are some approaches that really are distributed. One is called mean fields game. And in this case, he tells them something to build each their own strategy, okay, and try to optimize it. And moreover, so information sharing, this is another thing. So how are we going to do? I already said about how energy communities impact the electrical grid, so I'm not going to repeat here. Here is some experiments that we did on the island of Pantelleria. We typically do a lot of experiments on islands, on geographical islands, because geographical islands are power systems that are very interesting, because they're small, they are very weak, so you have frequency floating a lot, so whatever you do, you can see. They're very nice. So this was in the island of Pantelleria, and this is how the graph, you see the back curve, the famous back curve, really got modified due to the participation of 30% of people to a renewable energy community projects. So this is again a summary of what we have imagined as for our example. So n members, reward divided by n. You don't have information about the others. The game is simultaneous, and you have 24 hours for your strategy. I will not go into the details of the formulas here, but I just want to let you understand that each person, each device that stay at the fuse box of each home has one part which is his own strategy, so the consumption of this person, and other parts that are unknown. And this concerns the generation and the consumption of the others. Sorry, the consumption and the generation. Okay, and these are unknown. Then we have the cost related to the aging of the battery. We have some intangible benefits that relate to pollution, for example, to comfort in shifting consumptions and so on. And then we have constraints about capacity, about the status of the battery, about simultaneous charge and discharge, variables that are both discrete and real. So I think this is a mixed integer, either linear or non-linear program that depends on how you formulate the objective function. But we are looking for, of course, for each of those people to maximize the benefit, tangible and intangible. But to create personally an optimized strategy, each user needs to guess the other's rational behavior without knowing it exactly. We chose the most difficult way of not having an easy manager. So they really behave themselves. They carry out the community without a coordinator. This removes the single point of failure, because if you have a coordinator that holds information about everybody and then spread it on all the users, is a single point of failure. If he fails, the community falls, right? So we decided to remove this thing. We decided to distribute the computation in more machines, and we will not have management costs, and also we want personal data not to be shared. Security of the data can be preserved either how do you say, ciphering data, right? So you can have a ciphered transmission of the data, or you could have data that are masked in some way. So you transform some data that do not transfer the information. So the content, the meaning of the data. Okay, I will make you an example. It's very easy to understand, I assure you. This is what we did. So we have the first user here. What he does, so what we are doing here is that we are trying to transfer, without transferring each consumer's data, we are trying to build the aggregated consumption of the community. You remember that there were two terms that were unknown? I need to optimize to know what the others are doing, okay? So the first one will transmit his consumption, for example, in the same hour of the previous day, plus a random number that only he knows, to the second, okay? The second is doing the same thing. He adds to this number, which doesn't mean anything to him, because random number plus the quantity, okay? He adds his own. This thing is transmitted to the third. This thing is transmitted to the fourth. This thing is transmitted to user end and then back to the first. The first removes random value and gets information about collected consumption in that hour, okay? At this point, he can remove what he added at the beginning, and he can optimize his own strategy, right? This is taken from cybersecurity, and it's called synchrodictive scheme. And it's a way to mask information, transferring the data. They transfer data, but data don't mean anything, because it's random plus quantity, okay? And so this is our game. So this is how we transfer the information from one to the other. And this is how we find the strategy for all of them. Because you understand, once you have the information about the others, you can optimize and send the strategy to the other one. Then you send this, which is the collected consumption, including the optimized strategy of the first, to the second one, okay? And so on. And you have another round of the game. Then you will have another round of the game, till when you have convergence. Why do you have convergence? You have convergence when appliances are not shifted so much from one hour to the other. This is an equilibrium point. We tried this thing, and this is what we obtained. We obtained an increase in the shared energy of 10 kilowatt hours. This is what was a 10 users game. And this is the profile that we obtained. I should say that there are some problems, because this equilibrium point that I talked to you about, it's not proved mathematically, right? So we need to prove that there is what is called a Nash equilibrium point. We should prove it mathematically. We still have not done it. But there are a lot of problems. If we formulate the problem as it is, which is mixed integer, nonlinear, etc., it is hard. So, and another problem that we are facing right now is about optimization. For the time being, we are using a genetic algorithm in each of the premise, which is very, very, a little bit dancing. So we would like to turn the problem into a mixed integer linear programming program, and then we will have more stability, I'm sure. Also, this is nice if we want to implement into edge devices, which is what we are going to do. So we will do this thing. What are we going to obtain? And I'm ending because I'm late. So we will obtain the model of the energy community to forecast the impact on the grid. We can model the preferences of each user with a learning a long time, because if these people detach from what we had predicted, this means that the weights that we had put to the different objectives are wrong. And we can design an EMS that truthfully accounts for human behavior. So these are what we are heading now, so what we are working on. These are evolutions of this work and also consolidating the results that I have just presented. And I thank you very much for the attention. I'm sorry if I went around a little bit late.
Thank you so much, Eleonora. Very interesting, and thank you for being very pedagogical, because not everybody has an electrical engineering background here or is not familiar with the topic, but I think it was very well presented for everybody to follow. So now we can take a few questions.
I have a
Yes,
question here.
please, Sandra.
that privacy protection and for the group behavior, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that the first person reports her data and plus some noise.
Yes. Exactly.
So the second person doesn't know exactly if I'm the first person I report, I put a noise there. And I did calculate, and that way in the end,
No, the second doesn't put further noise.
that's right, and then all the other doesn't. So what I'm trying to say, and then in the end, the data will come back to me, and then I will remove my noise, and I will optimize my decision.
Exactly.
So what I'm trying to think, and how can this be in all the people in the community? So does that mean that everyone will function as the first one putting their data into the
Can.
So how can the second person and the third person, how are they going to optimize their decision?
Because they always have the same information as the first. Because once you get the aggregated data of all, it's not the personal data of one, it's the aggregated, it's the summation of all consumption. So there's no privacy anymore concern. I mean, this is possible. So the second one will receive the aggregated data, will remove his own strategy of the round.
The first one.
Yes, of the round before, will optimize and will put the new strategy and will pass it to the other one.
I see.
The other one removes his old strategy, optimizes, puts new strategy and shifts it to the other one, and so on.
So in that case, it does the order. I think the order will affect.
I also think so.
Right. So which means that across time, in what order? So supposedly for equity point of view, everyone there should be. I should be the first one, and I should be the last one. So how? Because this sequential thing will affect.
We will have to try. We will have to try, even with larger numbers, because 10 users, it's a game for for children. We should do it with hundreds. Then probably with hundreds, it will be relevant. Maybe a random choice could be an idea, or I don't know. Because actually, being the first, it's not. You will not have an advantage compared to the others. I don't think you have an advantage. So this is the point. And also, it's nice because if one of these units breaks down, anyone can take the role of the first. So there's no problem in it.
Yeah. So probably after some iteration, it will converge to an equilibrium.
It may.
Yeah.
So,
This is very interesting. Thank you.
yes, it is nice.
I have a question there, please.
Following to this discussion, what happens if people start cheating in this game, in this scenario? For example, when you add the first person, he adds a random number and then passes on his data, adds data, his consumption, and then passes on to the second person.
This is a kind like a cyber attack.
Yeah.
It's an internal cyber attack.
So the third person and the first person collude and they both share their numbers. They can know data about the second person.
Yes, they can do that, of course. There is no, there can be some mechanism to ensure people that they are, not cheating in putting the data. But I should say that this is a generalized problem of cyber physical systems. If you think wherever, we had this problem with blockchain platforms. Even metering systems can be tempered to provide data to the blockchain that are false, right? And so you say, hey, yes, but my measuring system is directly connected to the blockchain. Okay, but if I want to cheat, I can, modify the data, and this goes to the blockchain. And okay, this is certified, but it's wrong. Okay, so this is a main problem. This is called the Oracle problem for blockchain. I don't know if it's a general term, but it is a little bit about what you said. So, but it's a cyber attack. Okay.
Hi, just two small questions. So in the coordinator model, since the coordinator everyone has common knowledge, the coordinator knows their strategy, and everybody knows that the coordinator knows their strategy, and the coordinator knows everybody else's strategies. How does that affect the model? And then my second question was, you said you use like an evolutionary algorithm to determine like the optimal strategy. What is like the end bit in that of each member of the population actually represent? Is that like a user strategy? It's not discrete, so I don't really know what you're representing with each member of the population.
I'm not sure if I catch correctly. The first one was about the coordinator.
Yeah.
And you want to know how the presence of the coordinator may affect the functioning of the platform. What we thought is that our initial choice was to remove the coordinator. So we don't have any. We don't have any. In general, in non-cooperative game, this coordinator gives you, receives all the strategies and transmits to all people the strategy of the others, but sometimes he does not transmit really the strategies, but he transmits a proxy, so some value that is close to it. That depends on the agreements that they have. But I mean, he knows everything about the others. So in our scheme, nobody knows what the others are doing. But if you have a coordinator, he knows the consumption of all of the people, right? So this is, and moreover, it is a single point of failure. So if he gets broken, the platform goes down. And the second question was about?
Like in the evolutionary algorithm, like what does each member of the population represent? Is that like a set of strategies, or is that?
You want to know what is the variable in the optimization?
Yeah, exactly.
Variables are the switching on and off of the appliances at a certain time along the 24 hours. So you will have for each appliance a string of zeros and a 1, or you can have an integer that represents the hour.
Gotcha.
Okay? And you can have also the power. So a real number that represents the power that charges the energy storage system. So you can have mixed integer. You can have either deltas or binaries, and also you will have auxiliary variables here because storage systems are not easy to model. You have to model, for example, the fact that you cannot charge and discharge at the same time the storage. And this is done with a binary variable.
Okay. Thank you.
There is a question in the chat window, seems to be a very interesting question.
Okay.
In the chat, I think, asking about the topology of the network.
So does the network topology of an energy community play a pivotal role in the game? For example, the microgrid as a central community battery instead of each member having a battery. I should say that in the notion of energy community that I mentioned, the topology, so the lines that connect one node to another, really do not affect the game that we are playing, right? Of course, what is affecting is the number of energy resources. So if you have a centralized storage, or you have many storages for the different photovoltaic units, who owns these goods? This is also important in the formulation of the problem, right? Because who is affected by the aging? Is it the community as a whole and they all own the battery, or is it something that concerns Mr. X, right? So in this sense, topology is important, but I wouldn't say that lines are important, okay? They are if there is a problem of congestion. So if you need like an operation on the grid that you are looking at, so if you have a maximum injection at a certain hour or maximum, withdrawal of electricity in another hour. So in this sense, yes. So, but this is something that concerns the DSO, right? The distribution system operator. In Italy, what we have is that we have contracted for a given rated power, both in injection and in withdrawal. So this means that whatever value of power is in this range, 0 the rated, it's okay. So the distributor gives you the permit of connection in this range. So they don't care what you do in between, okay? That doesn't matter, okay? That's it.
I think we have one last question here.
Yes, please.
So I assume that your model says customers respond. My feeling is, it's very rare that customers respond. The only example I can see where there was a sort of substantial price elasticity is the old French system of colored, tomorrow is going to be really expensive. And people cut down their load. Even in California, people were told, please try to cut down your load, and people respond, not everybody. But what your models assume that people are much more responsive to sort of real-time conditions. And it seems to me unrealistic.
This is a model. And you said, well, it is a model. So this means that, for example, one further progress of this work is to try to see what are the weights of the objective function for each individual. Each individual will have a behavior that my model represents based on the formulation of the objective function that drives the strategy, right? Because I will have different items. I will be more sensitive to the cost or to the price of electricity, or I will be more sensitive to the comfort. So I will design a strategy for these guys. Then these guys behave differently, okay? One of those is doing different. The nice thing could be that I could find out what is important for this person. I could try to see what are the weights of the objective function for this guy. And I could learn online what they are going to do in the future. So it's correct. It's not said. Everyone has a wage, has a salary, right? And maybe one incentive is, interesting and for other one is non-interesting. So, or maybe one is, ethically concerned or not. Or maybe I don't want to shift my loads because I'm not interested. That's it. So, but this thing could be captured by this kind of formulation, hopefully.
Yeah, just to close now, I'd like you to give us a comment on the experience in Italy, because you mentioned there are many such communities. In Italy, they may be operating differently or being more popular in the north and in the south. So overall, what is the experience that you have?
The experience is that this incentive scheme is going slower than what the government was expecting. Because as I said, the issue of the mutual trust is crucial. So creating a legal entity, an association with other people you don't know, people don't trust. This is first. This thing has been more popular in the north because the north of Italy has a tradition of the commons. Southern of Italy has always been a kingdom of someone. Right? In history. So we are used to be, dominated. So people really don't create association, peer association. While in the north, they have, since the 16th century, the 15th century, sorry, they have already this tradition of the commons. And I think the cultural issues are basic. But you can see also how the cities are run in the north of Italy. They're much more clean, public space is respected. In the south, everyone thinks that public space is nobody's space. So it's very different culturally. So this is the first thing. Another thing that is nice is that in Italy, we have a lot of municipality-owned renewable energy communities because people cannot afford the upfront costs for buying photovoltaic systems. So some municipalities are the head, the representative of the energy community, and they, for example, make installations on schools. This is very nice. And the families of the children going to the schools are part of the energy community. So you see, this kind of models have a social impact, not only economical. So this is also very nice.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a very nice way of ending the seminar. Thank you all for coming, and let's give Professor Sanseverino a clap.